Right now, we going cliff diving? Well, the fiscal cliff, it's only 35 days away. Who's selling their plan better to the public? Trust me, for the next month, you're going to hear a lot about that. And we're going to try and make sense of what all this back and forth is about and which plan you think better fits your plan for American recovery. Next, these kind of prescriptions for kids, well, doctors could be prescribing the morning after pill to girls before they even need them, just in case they could need them for the future. It's a suggestion that's angering some in the religious community and having some parents pretty conflicted. And later, Powerball mania. All you need is $1 in the dream, right? Well, not really. Is this really what we ought to be putting our money towards? I'm not trying to be the Grinch here, but are we throwing good money after bad? Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks so much for joining us this Tuesday evening, November 27th. Now, we've got a lot to cover in the next 60 minutes, everything from cliff diving in D.C. to the return of the Rolling Stones. But I want to get us to Washington, but first I want to take you halfway around the world, Tahrir Square. And in Tahrir Square in Egypt, we remember the scene here of the Arab Spring, where it was supposed to be the birth of democracy. Well, about a year later here, Mr. Morsi's decided to consolidate all power under one roof, and now the protests, well, they are resembling what we saw before. This time, instead of going after Mr. Mubarak, now Mr. Morsi himself could be in a whole world of hot water. Where this leaves Egypt, we'll know. We'll come back to that story throughout the hour. But into Washington we go next, and there was a development with the Susan Rice controversy this afternoon. As you know, Susan Rice, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, she went to the Capitol today, to Capitol Hill, in fact, to try and smooth things over with Republicans who have voiced outspoken opposition to her potential appointment as Secretary of State. But it doesn't sound like things went very well.
We are significantly troubled by many of the answers that we got. I'm more disturbed now than I was before.
All right, there you saw both Senators McCain and Lindsey Graham, none too happy after their meeting today. Ambassador Rice, she's received strong criticism from Senate Republicans like those two, who said that she misled the American public about the Benghazi consulate attack, because 5 days after the attack, she went on Sunday morning TV and said the attack was a spontaneous one sparked by anti-Muslim video, not a premeditated attack. Well, is the GOP making a lot more out of this than they should, or are their concerns more than a little legitimate here? I want to bring in our panel tonight. I'm going to get into this with Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, TJ McCormick, host of Good Morning Westchester on WVOX Radio on 1460, and our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman. All right, guys, I take two things away from today. First off, it was Ambassador Rice, Dominic, who called for the meeting here. And secondly, from that press conference you just heard, the meeting didn't go well. But it tells me that if she's looking for a meeting on Capitol Hill, and in fact, behind closed doors, she said, yes, this was not, we had bad intelligence. I just read what the intelligence said, and she acknowledges an error. It tells me that the administration has big plans for this young woman, and that they are probably planning, or else they wouldn't have gone through the exercise, to nominate her for Secretary of State. And secondly, it told me that this thing ain't going away too quietly like we thought a day ago.
Certainly she is in the running for Secretary of State. I've been saying that her nomination, potential nomination, was dead on arrival. It still appears that way, though it appeared as of yesterday that there was some wiggle room on this. But I just don't know. The Republicans are not backing up at all, and she's trying to extend apparently an olive branch, but Richard, it's just not working as of right now.
For me, I'm confused because Senator McCain was the guy yesterday who said, I'm going to back off my, as Dominic said, DOA here for Ambassador Rice. We'll give her a fair shake. She then goes to the meeting, confirmed what we all knew, which was, no, it wasn't because of the movie. It was because of a planned terror attack. The administration, everybody said so. She just confirmed that to them. Now, maybe there's more that came out of the meeting we don't know yet. But it seems that there's newfound anger on the parts of Senators McCain, Senators Graham, and Senator Ayotte.
Yeah, and I'm not really well, I think I know why, but it's a little disappointing, to say the least, coming out of Senator McCain, who also said, hey, you know what? We found out almost immediately about the raid that got bin Laden, but we still didn't know a week later or a month later about what happened in Benghazi, which is a completely completely false comparison to try to make. It's unfortunate that it seems those three Republicans are more interested in headhunting and trying to do damage to President Obama than actually trying to get some answers.
But you know what? I mean, we've all had, and Senator McCain's become an evolving political figure. At one point, he was the maverick, Mr. Principled, and I think he didn't maybe help his legacy by what he went through in the campaign and other things. But Lindsey Graham, I've always been a fan of. Haven't agreed with all his politics, but he's always been a straight shooter, former JAG, Judge Advocate General, a military attorney. Their presser today said to me, they're more than a little passionate about this thing, and they weren't just mugging for the cameras. They really believe what they're saying. You think they're going to double down on this? Because the optics don't look right, TJ. We've talked about this before. All white guys going after somebody who most people think was just a messenger for the administration.
Well, and therein lies the nerve. Therein lies this administration being this administration. Because it was all about optics and white guys going after a black guy when it was Eric Holder. And now it's all about a whole bunch of white guys going after a young black woman. That is silly and stupid, and these people, we're judging them based on the color of their character and not the color of their skin and not the content of their character. Okay, and that is not what we're supposed to be doing, and that's what the left is doing once again, accusing other people of doing.
I haven't heard the White House say that. I've heard some commentators on the left say that. I haven't heard the White House say that.
TJ, my only point is this. If she went out and basically, they gave her the talking points, the intelligence community said, don't say it's terrorist, say it's this. She goes out and she says it on Sunday morning. Shouldn't we be banging on the intelligence community? Are we giving the wrong person the hard time?
Here's the difference. This time, it doesn't take the intelligence community to tell most of the world that this was not about a video and this was not a spontaneous thing. This was the whole wide world. This is when they're taking us to be stupid. We know. We don't need to think. Nobody thinks the intelligence community ever said this is a video, this was spontaneous. No, this was a planned terrorist attack on September 11th.
That's not what the intelligence community told her to go out. Now, maybe she was the wrong person to go out. Okay, maybe they shouldn't put out the UN secretary. Okay, maybe they put her in a difficult situation. I grant all that. But if she didn't follow with the intelligence community and she freelanced on Sunday morning, we'd have a whole nother problem. So again, I understand people tweaked. Again, the question I'd like to have answered is, how many times were you notified that this same embassy was under, if not attack, severe security questions beforehand? To me, that's the more pressing question.
Come clean.
But you know what? Is that come clean?
No.
I think she just reported what she was given.
I'm saying is that maybe there's a chance behind closed doors she said, I knew better, but I did. But I said what I didn't think was the truth. There's a chance she said that to these guys.
You don't think McCain and Graham would have jumped through hoops announcing that to the world?
Maybe in deference, maybe. I'm just saying.
Said it with a bullhorn.
Let's not dismiss it right away.
Let's turn now to the other big story of the day, and that's a countdown to the fiscal cliff. That's coming 35 days from now, the end of the calendar year. It could bring a mess. Not as draconian as everybody says come January 1, but nonetheless, it could be a real problem here. And of course, this so-called fiscal cliff isn't some Mayan prediction of doomsday financial collapse. It's really just the name given to a series of events scheduled to begin on the 1st that will, by all accounts, damage our economy, whether it be in small or large ways. In other words, not all the pain you may have been associated with the cliff will arrive the moment the ball drops from Times Square. Then again, most people may still not be quite sure of what pains could begin come January 1 either. So tonight, what we wanted to do was, instead of just using the slug, we wanted to set the record straight here about what we're really talking about, and then we'll get to the politics of the cliff, which is basically a glorified game of Washington chicken, okay? Lawmakers, they're playing this game here to wait to see which side will blink first. And Andrew, again, bring everybody up to speed on the nuts and bolts about what we're talking about with this, and then what everybody's really fighting about.
There's a lot to get through, Rich. This has a lot of moving parts, and it's a little complicated. The cliff, you'll recall, is a combination of tax policies and other fiscal ingredients that were all designed to end on January 1st, combined with spending cuts and other stuff that Congress designed to come due on January 1st when they punted on the debt limit fight last year. All told, the cliff includes $400 billion in tax increases and another $100 billion in spending cuts that all starts on January 1st. That money will help pay down our national debt and this year's deficit, but not that much. That $500 billion in savings from the cliff would pay for about 45% of this year's deficit, but that's just 3% of the total debt. It's a good start, but really not much more than that. And yet, the cliff will bring real pain to people for that drop in the larger bucket of good it'll do. 90% of all taxpayers would see higher taxes as a result of us hitting the cliff. And it would hit people in a variety of ways. You got the end of the Bush tax cuts, the end of the temporary Obama stimulus cuts, plus specific tax increases like with the end of the marriage penalty reductions or the expansion of the AMT tax, or the end of the payroll tax cut, money that comes right from your paycheck. That means taxes will go up for 121 million households, and it'll go from 4.2% to 6.2%. And there's more to worry about, like an end to unemployment benefits for 5 million people by the end of 2013, or job losses that come as a result of spending cuts, or the end of tax credits like those for people with low incomes or that provide help to children or help with college costs, not to mention cuts to programs like Medicare and Medicaid. And there's another big cut in the cliff, defense. Unless a deal is struck, defense spending will automatically go down 10% over 10 years, or about $50 billion a year. Obviously, that could impact national security, but it could also cost us jobs. There are more than 3.5 million Americans whose jobs are connected to defense. Cut defense spending, and that could mean layoffs or hiring slowdowns. So that's the overall, but what might the cliff mean to you at home? Well, for a low-income couple, a group making between 20 and 30 grand a year, Tax Policy Center says the cliff will take them from a $15 a year tax refund to having them owe Uncle Sam about $1,400 a year. What about a middle-income family with earnings between 40 and 65 grand? Cliff's going to cost them about $2,000 a year. And for higher-income families and small business owners taking home between $200,000 and $500,000 a year, their taxes will go up about $15,000 after the cliff. So what are the odds that lawmakers work out a deal before we go over the cliff? Well, everyone's saying they think a deal is possible, but both parties are still far apart. Democrats are pushing for tax hikes on the top 2% with stimulus and investment to boost the economy. They say no changes to Social Security, and they want to find savings within Medicare and Medicaid to reduce costs without, limiting coverage. Republicans, meanwhile, they don't want any tax increases on anybody, but they're open to increased revenue through things like caps on deductions or closing some loopholes. One proposal put Social Security and Medicare on the table with raised retirement and eligibility ages and reductions in inflation adjustments, no stimulus, and saving money by making federal employees pay for more of their benefits. So a lot of different cuts, a lot of different ways it'll impact people, Rich.
And thank you, Andrew, for that. There is nuance obviously attached to this. Right now, Democrats are saying, hey, let's guarantee everybody under 250 that they'll keep their tax cuts. It's above the 250 that they're talking about. Now, the numbers and everything might change. Maybe instead of 250, it's 500. Maybe instead of 39.6%, which is what everybody paid in the top end under Clinton, the numbers, instead of like 35 now, it's somewhere in the middle in the 37% rate. But rather than bog everybody down on the details, we'll talk about the politics for a second. I think what the public thinks that the fight's about is, are the rich guys going to pay what they used to pay? And we're going to have to cut some of the entitlement stuff. I think when they hear at home, hey, they're working out a deal, I think that's the deal they think they're talking about. But when the right says we're just talking about deductions, and all of a sudden somebody's mortgage interest rate deduction is now going to be off the table, that doesn't look so pretty. Dom, I think the plan, forget the politics for a second, I think the plan that makes more sense is an idea of a shared sacrifice thing. Real tangible stuff that is clear and everybody understand. If you make X, you're going to be paying Y on the top end. Middle, you guys are where you are right now. Some of the entitlement stuff that we've all gotten to, like if you need it on the Medicare stuff, that's going to change a little bit. We're going to have to cut some there. Looks like defense might even be on the chopping block. I think that plan, whether people will articulate the same way, is kind of what they said in November. Because the two camps said that pretty clearly on the campaign trail.
The argument that was made in November when Mr. Obama won re-election. But tell that to Republican leadership or Republican elected officials around the country. Now, I'm not just picking on Republicans. The facts are the facts. And, I was saying right after we heard the Speaker of the House say that, he was willing to bend on an increase, that it looked like a deal was going to happen. I'm not so optimistic tonight, Richard. Here's why. It's plain Washington talk what's going on. Okay, you're talking about what you just said is shared sacrifice. Bing, that's common sense to everyone. But now they can't even agree on the increase.
And Andrew, the words of rates and revenue, to many people, that sounds like white noise. What's the difference? It's a world of difference.
Big difference.
And that's going to be, and we'll talk about this in the next segment, who can better articulate what those things are. Do you have a sense, after the election, it seemed to me, for the moderate part of the Republican Party, there was a window here where they'd have to give up some stuff here, but it was a chance to take back their party and get more political relevancy in the next few segments. But now I get the sense, TJ, that in the last week or so, they're saying, you know what, maybe he's going to cave again. Let's push him on this. Let's just say, let's just talk revenue. And the closer we get to 12/31, they'll be the ones to give.
You know, but it also might be because, you know, they might really think that that's the better plan. It might not just be political. Like you said, it might be the better plan. You know, if you get more people on the tax rolls, if you lower rates and start spreading it around and get more people on the tax rolls,
they're not going to lower the rates.
You know, but
nobody is going to lower it. The point is, do they raise it on the top?
But those are real numbers. You know, people. You know, and again, by the way, 250. Man, again, now we're going to get into regional taxes now because again, it's trite now, but 250 in Boston is not 250 in Minneapolis.
I think TJ just articulated for a lot of folks, right of center and on the right here, they are not willing to say that there was any kind of mandate in November here, and we're going to have this all play out. Now, when we come back from the break here, we're going to talk about how this thing is going to play out. I'm talking about the messaging. You can already see some of the divisions right now. This is all going to come down, trust me, to this much we can agree, who can better sell the American public that their plan is better for America. There's two very different ideas here. When we come back from the break here, we're going to talk who's got the better sell job.